Hey there, Stampers. My name is Sherry Roth. I'm a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator from Sherwood Park, Alberta, Canada. And today I'm here to share this card with you. Now we are going to use some embossing paste and a mask, and we're going to color the embossing paste. And then we're going to combine it with a stamp set that is available for free until March 31st, 2020. With a $120 purchase. So this stamp set is called the Tags and Bloom stamp set. It's a beautiful stamp set. I love the font of the greetings. And the greetings are they're so fun. Like sending hugs, I miss your face, happiness looks gorgeous on you, just for you, and then wishing you the best. And wishing you the best could be used for lots of different occasions. And it's actually a two-step stamp. So when you stamp the outline image, these images are meant to be stamped in a color over top to color them in. So you can use them as a two-step stamp, but in this particular card, we're going to color in our images using Stampin' Blends. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So we are going to start by coloring our embossing paste and creating our background. Okay, so I've got here a piece of 3 3/4 by 5 inch Calypso Coral cardstock. And I'm going to use one of our masks. This is from the Basic Pattern masks. These were in the holiday catalog, but they are still available. You can find them online. I'll have a full supply list in the description below, but you can find them online under, I think it says Holiday Catalog Favorites. So there is a polka dot one, which that's the one that we're going to use, but also included in this set is, you can't really see this very well, can you? I wonder if I put it on here. You can see the pattern a little bit better. So there's that pattern. There is this gorgeous, almost woodland-like forest pattern. And then there is this one here. So you get those 4 patterns in the package. But like I said, we're going to use the polka dot one. And what you'll need for this is you'll also need a silicone mat. You'll need, of course, the embossing paste. You'll need one of the palette knives, and then you'll need some ink refill. Okay, so I'm using Calypso Coral because I want to do tone on tone. And what I'm going to do is I am going to take a little bit of my embossing paste out of the container. That's probably way more than I need. That's probably enough. And I shared some basic tips for using embossing paste in a previous video, and I'll link that below. Now I'm just going to add a couple drops of ink refill. So, and then the amount of ink refill that you add really depends on how close you want to match the color. So you can start with a couple drops and mix it up really well and see how closely it matches the color. Maybe you don't want it to match the color perfectly. Maybe you want it to be a shade lighter or a shade darker. You can add more or add less based on the look that you're going for. So I'm just mixing this up really well, trying to get all of those white clumps out. So I'm just mushing it in there and then scooping it all back in and trying to give it a good mix. Okay, I think I'm happy with that. That looks pretty good. So I'm just gonna slide this over. I'm gonna grab a scrap piece of paper and I'm going to use some temporary adhesive to just stick my cardstock to my scrap paper. Now, if you don't have temporary adhesive, because it's not something that Stampin' Up! Carries, we used to carry it years ago, you can probably find it at your local scrapbook store, but you can also use just a tiny little dot of snail adhesive. You just need something to hold that cardstock in place so it doesn't move around. And then I'm gonna set my mask over top so that it's straight. And now I have lots of space on either side to hold this mask in place. So I'm just gonna use my hands to hold it in place. But if you were doing a larger piece, you could use some washi tape to stick it down so that it doesn't move, okay? So I'm going to pull up some paste and just really push it into that mask. So I'm scraping off the excess as I go, and I'm making sure it's in each one of those circles. Now you don't have to fill the entire space. You can pick and choose. If you just want to do a certain area, you can do that. So there's really there's no right or wrong way to do this. But I want to fill the entire background. Just take a little bit more. It's hard to do with one hand. Let's see here. Make sure I've got it all filled in there. And then I'm going to scrape off the excess. And now, if I wanted to save this, because this is perfectly good, you could save it for a couple days just in an empty embellishment container. You could scrape it off in there. I'm just going to rub it on there. This I'm going to drop into a bucket of water that I have sitting off to the side, which I'll share more with you in a bit. And this, like I said, if you don't want to waste that, scrape it into a container and it will keep for a couple days. It won't keep for very long, but you'll be able to keep it for a couple days. I'm just going to wipe off most of that. That I'm going to pop into my bucket of water until I get a chance to clean it. Now I want to do one more thing with this before I remove my mask. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to set this aside for just a second. I'm going to pull in some larger scrap paper that I have. So this is just some wrap that I received when I purchased something breakable from a local shop, and I've kept it, and it's kind of my splattering area. So now I've got a Stampin' Spritzer, and I've put a couple drops of white shimmer paint in here and then mixed it with rubbing alcohol. So there's a couple drops, maybe 2 or 3 drops of white shimmer paint, and then I filled the rest with rubbing alcohol. And the reason I used rubbing alcohol over water is just because rubbing alcohol dries faster. Okay, so I'm just giving it a little shake, and I'm going to spritz it. And that's going to give a little bit of shimmer to my polka dots. And then I'm going to peel this back. And I'm going to dump that into my bucket of water. And I'm going to set this aside to dry. Okay, I'll bring that up for a closer look a little bit later in the video. Let's move that out of the way. Okay, so now let me show you what I've got here and how to clean. I shared this in a previous video, like I said, and I'll post the link to that video below. But when you use embossing paste, you want to clean your masks pretty quickly. So I've just got a bucket of water here. It was warm, but I'm filming a few videos all at once, so it's not so warm anymore. But I'm just basically using my fingers to make sure that there's no clumps of embossing powder left, or embossing paste, sorry, left on my mask. Now you might find that it still ends up with this little bit of a white film on it, and that doesn't matter so much. It's just the clumps that you want to get rid of. Okay, so I'll flip it over, make sure that there's nothing on the back. And then I'll set it onto a paper towel here, and then I'm gonna do the same thing with my mask, or my silicone mat, sorry. Just make sure that there's no clumps left on there. I'll set that on there, and then I'm gonna use my fingers and make sure I get the bulk of that embossing paste off of my palette knife as well. So now I'll take another piece of paper towel and just put it over top, and that'll soak in that saturated water, or soak in that water. And if you wanted to turn around and do this again, like use it right away, you can rub that. Just be careful when you rub it, make sure it's fully dry before you go to use it. Just because you don't want to add that moisture to your cardstock. Okay, so I'm just gonna set that aside. That one I've got some water on here. Let's just give this a wipe. Okay, all right. So now we can move on. We'll set that aside to dry and we will work on the rest of our project. So I am going to take this floral image, and I've got a piece of Whisper White cardstock that measures 2 3/4 by 3 inches. And I'm going to stamp this image with Memento black ink. So I'm just inking it up. Because this is a larger stamp, I prefer to ink upside down. And then I'll just flip it over, and I'm not cutting this out or punching this out or anything, so I want it to be kind of in the center of this piece. So I'll position that, apply a little bit of pressure, and then peel that off. And then I'm going to take this border image. It's almost like a stitched or a dashed outline. And I've got a scrap piece of Whisper White cardstock here, and I'm going to use my Calypso Coral ink. And stamp that border image. And then I'm going to bring back my Memento ink, and I'm going to use the greeting "Wishing You the Best" and stamp that inside of that frame. Okay, just like that. And then we have a punch that coordinates with this. There's actually 2 punches that coordinate with this Tags in Bloom stamp set. There's this one, which is called Label Me Lovely, which is in the January to June mini catalog. And there's another one in the January to June mini catalog that coordinates with it. The name escapes me at the moment. So I'm just gonna feed that in, line it up, and punch it out. So easy. Okay, so we'll set that aside. And then we are gonna bring back this image, and we're gonna do some coloring with our Stampin' Blends. So I'm going to use Crumb Cake to just color in these little dots on the flower. So I'm using the fine tip and just adding a few dots of ink. And then I'll use, this is Dark So Saffron, and I'm just going to color around those dots. Just like that. And then for my flower, I'm going to use light and dark Calypso Coral. So I am going to start, actually I'm going to add, because this is a relatively small image, I'm just going to add a little bit of dark here and kind of where the flower would likely be a little bit darker. And then I'm going to color in this center bit and then add a bit more dark over here. And then I'll use my light and color in the rest of the flower. Oh, I think it's almost time for a new light Calypso Coral. We used this at my team meeting this week, and I think it was well used. Let's try using the fine tip. Not much juice left in there. That's a little better, but it's really dark. Let's see. See if we can get this to work for this little bit of flower that's here. Kind of have to go over it a little bit more than I normally would have to. But that's okay. We'll make it work. Okay, and then we'll do this little flower over here. Okay, there we go. And then we're going to use some Old Olive for the leaves. I'm going to use both light and dark. So I'm just going to add a bit of dark to the leaves. So I'm just going kind of down the middle of the leaves, and then again I will go over it with my light and blend that dark a little bit, and then just pull the color. Oh, it looks like I forgot a little area there for Calypso Coral, so I'll go back and do that. All right. So just finished coloring these leaves. Let's go back in and add just a touch coral right there. Okay. All right, so now we've got our floral image cut out, or colored in, sorry. And what I've done is I've used a piece of our, I think this is called flax ribbon. I might be wrong on that, but I'll have a full supply list below. And I've used a piece of our Clubhouse twine. So this is the black. It comes in a set of 4 different colors. And what I've done is it's actually quite thick, and I didn't want it to be that thick. So I just pulled a couple fibers, 2 or 3, or maybe even 4, just whatever is kind of willing to separate. And I've pulled it apart and folded this in half and wrapped it around and tied a bow. Okay, so it looks like that. I didn't want you guys to have to watch me fuss tying that around. And then I'll use just a little bit of adhesive. I'll use some fast fuse because it's handy. And I'm just going to put that right there. I don't want the ends to tuck underneath. Oh, hang on, I'm gonna do it this way. So I'm just gonna tuck that just like that. And then for this bit, I'm going to use some dimensionals. And I'll add 3 of them, kind of omitting on this side because this side is going to go over where the ribbon is anyway, so I don't want to add extra dimension there. If you were concerned or wanted to put a little bit of adhesive, you could put a mini glue dot on here. I'll just put a little bit of fast fuse on there. And then this is going to get centered within that black frame. So it's got a nice even border all the way around. And then there's our focal point. Okay, so now we will go back to our texture paste piece. I'm gonna peel it off the scrap paper, and yeah, it's dry. So then what I like to do is sometimes if you're doing a full sheet and you're not cutting it down, is you'll find that you'll have little extra bits kind of hanging off the edge. So I'm just gonna take my snips and just trim off anything that's kind of hanging off the edge. So I'll do that on, it appears to just be the 2 sides. I think the top and the bottom seem to be okay. Okay, so that's done. Let's kind of wipe that off to the side so it doesn't get on our project. And then that piece of cardstock is going to get added to a piece of black cardstock. So remember, this piece measured 3 3/4 by 5, and this is just going to be a tiny little border around the edge. So the black measures 3 7/8 by 5 1/8. Now, if you watch my videos, I normally do not use this much glue because this multi-purpose glue really is very, very good, and you don't need a lot. But because this has a bit of texture and it's a little bit warped, I'm using a little bit more than I normally would. Okay, so I'm just centering that. So see how that just gives it just a nice little border all the way around the edges. And I'll bring this a little closer so that you can see. Can you see that texture on there? And then each one of those polka dots just has a touch of shimmer to it. I love the look of that. Okay, so then my card base is going to be a piece of a thick Whisper White cardstock, measures 5 1/2 by 8 1/2, scored at 4 1/4. And you can see that the score line or the groove is on the top. I'm gonna fold it in. Use my bone folder to make it nice and crisp. And then I'll add some more multi-purpose glue. to the back of that. And then the white has a little bit wider of a border all the way around. I love having projects with various thicknesses for the mats. I just love the look of that. Okay, and then it's time for our focal point. So again, I'm just gonna use Tombow. You could use dimensionals as well, but because I've already used dimensionals for the greeting on the front, I don't wanna do a double layer of dimensionals because I don't wanna have to pay extra postage when I pop this card in the mail. So I did use a little bit more Tombow again for this than I would normally use. That's just gonna get stuck right in the corner there. And there's our card, all finished. All right, so thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give me a thumbs up. If you are not yet a subscriber, hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Thank you so much for your support. I'll have a full supply list in the description below, and if you have any questions, just comment and I will answer them. All right, thanks for watching.